What's something you confessed to your partner that ended your relationship? True story. I confessed that I wanted to do more for her. I thought I was neglecting her and working too much. That next week, she sat me down and told me that I was threatening her independence and that she needed a week to think about us. The week after that, she broke up with me. My friend was telling us that she threatened to kill herself if her boyfriend broke up with her. I said this was toxic and that I wouldn't kill myself if my boyfriend broke up with me. My boyfriend broke up with me the next day because apparently not wanting to kill myself meant that my love for him was not true. 7th grade is frickin' fricked. I'm a middle school teacher now, and whenever I feel shocked by the behaviors I see, I just think back to this. I said while crying because he got angry with me at a restaurant that I am sometimes afraid to tell you how I feel because I'm afraid of how you'll react. And he said, well, that's freaking pathetic. My partner had a habit of starting a convo by asking how I felt about something, then would criticize me for feeling what I felt. It always ended up being a debate about why I felt the way I did. It was never okay for me to feel sad, worried, scared, etc. Over time, I started to feel anxious when he'd ask questions and purposely responded vaguely or just straight up said that I didn't feel comfortable sharing, which would incite anger or more judgment. Eventually, my response became exactly that, a teary, I don't know if I want to share because I'm worried about how you'll react if you respond. And his responses were along the lines of, that's stupid, you're ridiculous, don't be an idiot. Seriously? I don't know if it's because I got so used to it or from being distracted by all the other bigger things in the relationship, but for some reason I didn't even notice that this was another bad thing until reading this comment. It was just normal. I told her my work schedule. A lot of people don't seem to be okay with a 4-on-4 off schedule because it's an 8-day week. 1 month I'm working weekends, the next month I'm off on the weekend. The ones where I'm working, they don't seem to get enough attention on their days off. I know that pain. I worked a 4-on-4 off swing shift in the past, and that shit is so hard for people to plan around. Better than my partner's. Her schedule is all over the place, like zero schedule pattern, and she doesn't know what it will be until a month in advance, so August roster sent end of June. It is literally pretty much impossible to plan anything in advance for days out, except for her planned leave further away than a month. Want to do an event for X date 2 months away that requires tickets? Sorry, not unless it's a proper booked day off, or take the chance and risk wasting them. So lucky my job is super flexible and allows semi-short notice leave if no projects are planned that we can still do things. I didn't want us to move in together with 6 other relatives. That's an important one right here. I feel like it is rare in the US, but I come from a poor butt country, and when war broke out, we had to live with my relatives. It was the worst month of my life, fighting for the right to use the toilet and the microwave. Then we moved to a normal country to live in our own flat. It also gets funky when you go to the kitchen and that one relative tells your wife that men should be on the front line, and it's all because of the Jews. Anyway, update. With my wife, that is. We are actually all chill with each other, but not when we fight for the toilet with my entire family while there is a collapse outside. That I didn't believe the Bible was scientific fact. I didn't realize her family was hardcore fundamentalist Christians that spoke in tongues and believed everything in the Bible was historical and scientific fact. Broke up with me on the spot. We'd only been dating a couple weeks, and this was the first time religion had come up somehow. We stayed friendly but never went out again. 2 years later, she was dating a woman and was abandoned by her family. 3 years after that, she was married to that woman and transitioning to becoming a man. He has been happily married to the woman for about 10 years now, hasn't had any contact with his family since then. I believe it was I love you. Edit. Ted Mosby. I get it. Also, because this has kind of blown up, I wanted to clarify something. She was absolutely right to leave. I was young and selfish and didn't have a firm grasp on boundaries. She was in an emotionally vulnerable place and was dealing with unresolved trauma from some past relationships and her own parents' divorce. I knew all of this. I knew she feared commitment. I knew she wasn't in a place to reciprocate. I said it anyway. It was a shitty thing for me to do. I didn't recognize it at the time, but it was effectively an attempt to push her into being as invested in the relationship as I was. It was unfair. We're both happily married now, to other people, which I hope is obvious. I wish her nothing but the best in life. Broke down crying during a more realistic war movie. She told me to suck it up. After she confronted me for drinking too much, I finally sought VA disability, diagnosed with depression, PTSD, anxiety, among other things. Bills started pouring in and I told her we can't afford certain luxury things because I was the sole breadwinner. I said I felt like I was drowning and my head is slowly slipping under the surface. She told me to figure it out. So I did. We divorced, and I'm much more happy and no longer on the train of be a man and tighten your bootstraps. I got help and know that it's okay to do so. That I didn't like the person they became when they hung out with one specific friend. They became mean, petty, rude, and overly critical of everything while demanding I chauffeur them around, X didn't drive, and would get shit-face roll on the ground drunk and say the ugliest things. I was shocked to see this total stranger in my partner's body, so I told them. I now understood why some people asked their partners to not see certain friends anymore. Apparently, this made me abusive, claiming I was isolating them. They were cheating on me with that friend, then ended up cheating on that person, burning through multiple roommates, including 2 different former friends and a vague acquaintance. All of them apologized for believing shit said about me like what the frick, and owing 2 of them thousands of dollars in damages. I feel like I dodged a massive cannonball. That I realized I did not love her enough to be happy spending the rest of my life with her. We go together because the circumstances made so much sense, but I'm afraid I never truly loved her. I was only comfortable and feeling loved. I treated her as well as I could, but deep down I knew I would never be able to give back what she gave me. I still feel the guilt of breaking someone's heart for something she'll likely never fully understand, therefore will not feel fair to her. I was on the receiving end of this situation. Was with my GF for 10 years. Relationship seemed absolutely perfect from my perspective. I had just bought an engagement ring and plowed my life savings into a house for the 2 of us. Less than 2 weeks after moving in, she told me out of nowhere that she doesn't love me in the same way I love her. She said she realized this about 3.5 years ago, but didn't know how to end it and was just comfortable. So I lost my dream partner and dream home in a matter of minutes out of absolutely nowhere. This was 2 months ago. I'm still in complete shock, still feel broken, still wondering if I'll ever be able to let anyone in ever again. She asked me to open up about my feelings, literally said that men don't open up enough. I opened up and bam, she became distant and it was over. Sometimes I feel that toxic masculinity is something many women want, but while at the same time want the brownie points for being open and accepting that men have feelings. The feeling expressed was that I felt that I was expected to be strong always, and it felt oppressive, ironic. Context is important here. Person was abusive for months and I simply tolerated it and brushed much of it off. Death threats? Meh. Extremely obsessed and jealous? Meh. Extremely emotional, loving, then hateful? Meh. Lying, cheating, manipulating, gaslighting? Meh. I'm not an easy person to frighten, intimidate, or dissuade. I'm stubborn and loyal. Over time that changes as I got pretty passionate, yet not with love, but hatred. I conjured and planned my words carefully, rehearsing them. I selected them after getting to know this shitty person enough to understand their deepest insecurity. Then I told them when the time was right. I don't even love you. I truly loathe you. Truthfully, I just hate myself enough to be the only thing willing to waste time and give you anything at all. Ultimately, your life will be of no consequence. In hindsight, I could have walked away earlier had the authorities involved. This was not a kind nor mature solution. However, a trauma bond is difficult to contend with. She was also my first, and I was not well mentally nor emotionally. Not proud, just venting. Not me, but my ex confessed to me that he'd put a tracker on my phone. He only admitted it once my friends started pointing out how he would always show up wherever I or they were if I was with them. Before you come at me, they were mutual friends, and he would be invited, but come up with some excuse not to go. Apparently, he was watching us, and the times we saw him were only the times we'd caught him. He'd follow us basically every time. Needless to say, I broke up with him immediately. I have brain damage to the point I cannot experience any good emotions, be it love, happiness, or whatever else doesn't come to mind yet. I confessed I liked her, but I don't feel anything towards her. All my I love yous feel empty, and I cannot live with the constant lies to her and myself. Edit. After some people have commented, I have learned it's not possibly brain damage. There is talk that it may be alexithymia or anhedonia. However, none of those really fit what I experience. I fear I'm not finding the answers to what I'm suffering from. In the worst case scenario, I might have something the world hasn't seen before. Therefore, that could also be a reason I don't find any information. For anyone who has TBI, I want to apologize if I've offended you. That's not my intent. That is just the best way I can explain it from the information I have. That I had depression. I was crying in front of her. She went through 2 bouts of depression during our relationship, so I thought she could help. She called the cops on me, got me thrown out of the house. Only deeded in her name. We were married for years, seemed like it was safe and steady. I just never asked for help before then. She said she never wanted to talk to me again. Then she refused to divorce me, so I divorced her. Life's weird. I've had the flu this week and was dehydrated. I was so sick, I honestly thought I was going to die in my sleep. I reached out to my friend and told him that I had a tough day and that I missed him. Told him how happy he made me feel and how much I trusted him. I love him as a person friend. He took the whole conversation completely wrong and assumed I was emotional over him and that I loved him romantically. He told me to never text him again and to leave him alone. I was so sick at the time and was basically trying to express my gratitude to this person because I seriously thought I was on my deathbed and potentially will never speak to him again. My other friend knew something was instantly wrong with me and came over. Took me to the ER and I was admitted overnight because of how dehydrated I was and to help support my body recover from the flu. Thankfully, I'm feeling better now and able to hold food down. I guess I thought he was a better friend, but I was completely wrong. Ours was kinda a fairly mutual confession. We'd just sat through the 1-2 punch of lockdown and legalized weed. In other words, having a lot of time to ourselves with a low level of constant inebriation, introspection just kinda happens in that environment. They confessed first. They talked about being bisexual. We talked about their attractions and old crushes that they barely accepted for themselves. Honestly, I wasn't surprised, and it really didn't change much for me. A week later, I confessed. I talked about how I'd had a waxing and waning but otherwise constant desire to not be a guy for most of my childhood and adult life. I'd almost come out to the people close to me about a dozen times in 20 years. To which they responded by effectively shouting, "I freaking knew it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of conversations, some bright and others a bit more serious, but at the end of it all, we were left at a pivotal point. They wanted to move to the city once our rent was up. I really didn't want to find a new job. With so much personal revelation, we made the decision to separate, go our own ways, and figure out what the new us wanted. Fast forward 2.5 years. They're still in the city. They figured out they were non-binary as well as bisexual. I'm still in the suburbs, transgender, and asexual. We still get together and hang out, our old relationship having very comfortably settled into a close friendship. I caused a breakup by having opinions and existing in an insulated southern relationship. My boyfriend left because I was just being me and having opinions that went against his Southern Baptist, super wealthy and perfect family. I'm from the South, Florida, and his mother couldn't stand me. I came from the wrong side of the tracks. Nothing I did was good enough. She, the mother, caught me gossiping once about a teen pregnancy that involved a family friend, and she quite literally bullied and harassed me for weeks because of it. Another time, she found out I got my boyfriend alcohol for his 22nd birthday and harassed me and bullied me, telling me I was trying to make her son an alcoholic. My father was going through rehab at the time, and I was helping him get sober. The level of cruelty in her words was unmatched, even to this day. One day, it became too much, I think, for my ex, and he finally broke up with me over a text. 3 days before I graduated college. I'll never recover, honestly. This woman is still high society in Northeast Florida. She attends church every Sunday, never curses, donates a ridiculous amount of money to charities. Everyone thinks she's a goddamn saint, yet she nearly destroyed me. She is why I don't attend church anymore. And yes, I dodged a bullet when my boyfriend left me. It was a first date, if that counts. We were both in college. Her brother and I are friends, and I crushed on her when we were in high school. We hung out a few times and hit it off, so I asked her out on a date. At dinner, she told me that she didn't understand how anyone could vote for McGovern instead of Nixon. I confessed that I voted for McGovern. She stood up and walked away. I felt so bad. I've been shy and awkward around women I'm attracted to my whole life. I was never the first one to make a move, and I'm pretty sure she brought it up, but I couldn't remember, so I was kind of blaming myself for talking politics or religion on a first date. To my great relief, her brother was not upset. She had just been going through unrelated things, and I stepped on a landmine. Our group of friends still refers to failed first dates as the infi dating strategy, even though we've all been married since the 70s. The reverse of the question, but I briefly dated someone who's now done studying a very intense subject at one of the best universities in the world. He told me he didn't know how to open a bank account and kept all his money just in his closet. I couldn't handle it. Something about being so wildly intelligent that his mind neglected the basics just made me realize the relationship would end up being summarized as basically identical to parenting a child who could do PhD math as a hobby in the morning before going to work as a neurosurgeon, and coming home to tell me he listened to someone speaking Mandarin on the subway and now is fluent himself, all as I cut his grapes in half to prevent him choking to death. It's hard to explain a person who's mind-blowingly intelligent and an idiot at the same time. I just couldn't do it. He reminded me of Sheldon, but with a TBI that deleted common sense. I'm glad we have a society that fosters his incredible mind, because without warning labels, he'd have died long ago. We argued whenever I set a boundary, and man couldn't take no for an answer. Always got a terrible feeling in men, gut with him, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The nice guy pretense dropped as soon as we decided to be exclusive, forcing X on me when I was sick. Couldn't even boil water to save his own life, eating constantly at McDonald's, telling me what to wear, etc. He was 40 and admitted that he preferred dating 18-year-olds as they didn't talk back at him or argue about things. He said that they worshipped him and made him feel great, so it's better than dating jaded, cynical 30-year-olds who apparently will die alone. Some 18-year-old out there thinks she's mature and so hot that he's with her. Poor thing doesn't know what's waiting for her and hopefully has enough saved up for a lifetime of therapy. That I didn't like the way she treated me when I was helping her out. She didn't drive and found a lot of errand-type stuff very stressful, so when we were dating, I was happy to run to the store with her so she could stock up on kitty litter and big bags of flour. But every time we did this, she would get super irritable and bite my head off for offering or not offering to carry stuff, or standing too close or not understanding exactly what she needed before she told me. I swear to God, I was trying my best. I honestly thought it would be a pretty straightforward conversation, and that when she realized what was going on, she'd apologize and work on it. Actually going through this right now, after months and months of no intimacy, my partner of 17 years recently told me they aren't as attracted to me as they used to be as I've put on weight. I'm not rolling in the deep, but I'm not the 70 kilograms I used to be either. I've helped raise and put her 2 kids through private schooling. I've supported her when she wasn't working, supported her when she wanted a career change. I drive 9 hours to get to my job the day before my block of 7 days, 12.5-hour shifts, only to travel another 9 hours home. Pretty gutted and feel worthless. Don't think our relationship can survive this. Never knew she was that shallow. I dated a girl for about 2 months. From the beginning, she let me know that X was off the table until she felt a real romantic connection, which was fine by me. One night, she finally felt enough trust to let me know she smoked weed often. This wasn't an issue at all for me, but we come from a country where all drugs are very stigmatized, so she still kept it a secret from most people. Anyway, she was so relieved with how cool I was with it that she decided to confess something else too. She was a virgin. I again told her that wasn't an issue for me and was just curious why it hadn't happened yet. She explained that she had low self-esteem as a teen, and then the pressure had made losing her virginity more important, leading her to want to wait until the ideal match and circumstances were finally available. After all this, I felt compelled to come clean too, as I have had many more sexual partners than the average person in our country. As soon as I told her the actual number, she immediately said, "Yeah, that's way too much for me, I don't want to date you anymore." And we just sat awkwardly for like 5 minutes before I just got up and left. My alcoholism. I was afraid of telling my wife of 5 years, 12 together total, that I needed help after letting her find me swig out of a vodka bottle before a morning walk. I was a very functioning alcoholic to where nobody knew the extents. I was desperate and semi-suicidal. I was leaving clues but was afraid of confronting her straight up. Finally, she said, "Do you have a drinking problem?" And I responded, "Yes, I do and need some help." She left and I haven't seen her since. She wasn't supportive in my rehab, and I'm close to 1 year sober this month. We were growing apart. It took a lot of truth bombs to figure it out. Was dating a guy for 3 years and broke up with him because he was generally treating me poorly. We talk after about 2 months of being apart, and I find out he's being sued for child support for a 3-year-old son he has in another country that he not only completely hid from me, but also just blocked the kid's mom when he found out she was pregnant and dipped back the US, was legitimately a deadbeat dad, and worst of all, didn't even care how his son was doing or if he was okay. So while he's trying to wine and dine me in the beginning of our relationship, this poor girl is sending pics of her newborn to my ex's mom, and neither of them told me. Needless to say, getting back together is definitely no longer on the table. So disgusting. I tried flirting with my fiance by jokingly cheating at a thumb war by wrapping my index finger around her thumb. She yanked her hand back as hard as she could and hurt her wrist. I immediately apologized. She proceeded to accuse me of being an abuser. A while later, she asked me if I was mad at her. I confessed I was a little upset about her accusation. Naturally, she kicked me out. This was 2 days after I uprooted my life and moved across the country to be with her. I confessed that I was pro-choice after the US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade because it was very concerning to me. He was pro-life and didn't understand why that took me off guard, seeing as he had told me he was libertarian. Being in a relationship with someone who thinks my ownership of my own body is conditional doesn't sit right with me.